Hello, and welcome to the Providence College Podcast. I'm your host, Liz Kay, and I'm joined by producer and videographer Chris Judge of the class of 2005. Here at the Providence College Podcast, we bring you interesting stories from the Fryer family. Today, we're talking with organizational consultant and author Lisa Bates, a member of the class of 1988, about her book, Beyond the Rails, USA Cross-Country Train Travel. With 4 cross-country adventures under her belt, covering more than 21,000 miles, she is a self-proclaimed train-amping expert. Lisa will be leading a presentation about rail travel at PC's Alumni and Family Weekend on Saturday, February 10th. Lisa, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
I understand your love of rail travel began during your study abroad experience at PC. Can you tell us more about that?
I can. I'd like to say my interest in travel, period, began at PC my junior year abroad. I was fortunate to take a semester in London and then spend a month traveling Europe with my friends on a Eurail. And it was that experience that kind of came to mind when I was looking for something different to do with my family.
Well, that's fantastic. And so what got you started on that first train journey with your family? Can you tell us more?
Yeah, I had wanted to I'm from Boston. I live on Cape Cod, and we wanted to go to the West Coast for a family vacation. And a couple of years back, 2014 was one of those years where gas prices were soaring, and airline tickets were just outrageous. So we're a family of 5, most of the budget on just the flights. And I remember thinking, there's got to be a better way to do this. And I always think about, one of my favorite vacation times was on the train in Europe with my friends. And thought, why don't we have that in the United States? And, that would be a really cool thing to do. And it turns out that we do. It's a little different, not quite as for everyone who's done the Eurail in Europe. We're not quite there. But it really is an amazing opportunity. And I'm so excited to be speaking at Providence and talking to college students and families, because I really think they're the perfect age. It's great for families, but if I were back in college and I knew about this, oh boy, we would have done it.
Well, what are the benefits of train travel? What makes it a good choice for college students, for families, and everything else?
Yeah, so it's just a really unique way to see the country. As a parent, I have 3 older teenagers, 2 of whom are now driving. It's nerve-wracking, and the thought that one of my kids is going to say, "I'm going to drive cross country," is going to make me go, "That's great," and then have a little mini heart attack inside as I think about the driving part of it. The nice thing about the train is it takes you right into some of the best cities in the United States. It can, it takes you to national parks. You can go anywhere, and it's so relaxing. The views are incredible, and you really just sit back. You can talk, read, eat, walk around. The seats are much roomier than airline seats these days, so it's just a really comfortable and different experience. The reason that, I think the reason that I focus on college students is, no one has to drive. Everyone can be together. You can hang out, go to a cafe car, go sit in the viewing cars, and just really enjoy that part of it, I think even more than driving.
Now, I thought it was interesting that you said that you were traveling with 3 teenagers because I think that, separating teenagers from their phones or college students from their phones could be really tough. How did you unwind and really kind of live in the moment when you're on these trips?
Well, there's a couple of things at play. Once you get, as I say, west of the Mississippi, I'm a New Englander. The Wi-Fi isn't great, so you can have really spotty connections, and that isn't necessarily a bad thing. The truth is, there's just so many people and places to go and walk around. You really don't. It's a very, very old-fashioned social environment, if I could put it that way. When you go to the dining car, you're seated with other people on the train until all the seats are full, and then they, shift through to the next group. So the expectation is that you kind of meet and greet and chat with people, which was a phenomenal experience for my teenagers. Believe me, I had my worries about putting all 5 of us together, but another nice thing, you can get up and walk to another car if you're getting tired of who you're with.
So there's that kind of train community. There's the train car community that you can... Exactly.
And you're not confined to, the back seat of the car or whatever. You can really just get up and move around. So
I'm wondering if you could tell us a little more about train amping. I mean, what are your tips for spending the night on an overnight train?
Okay, so probably my biggest worry out of the gates was, for me personally, because, a vacation is all about me, the mom. Can I sleep on a train? Like, can I survive this? And, I'm a tall person, and I thought, sleeping overnight, how's this going to work? Now, mind you, I had never been on a train in the United States when I decided to take this trip. So I was very much winging it. The train amping part, I made up that word because I feel if you can camp, and I'm not a big camper, I happen to like hotels, but if you can camp, you can certainly spend the night on a train, because on the train, there's no bugs, there's no weather, there's there's really just the lull of the train kind of rocking you to sleep. And the seats are quite comfortable, even for tall, long-legged people like my family. There's really adequate room to sort of lay back. I mean, it's not a perfect night's sleep, don't get me wrong, but it is very doable. So if you're on the train one night and then the next night you're in a hotel and then you're back on the train, it's very manageable.
I think you mentioned in your book that the bathroom situation may not be that different than camping, though.
Yeah, that, it's still a public restroom facility, I have to say. It gets better. Again, west of the Mississippi, there are superliners, which are double-decker trains, and all the bathrooms are downstairs. So that alone is a whole other way. I mean, I think in New England, we think of trains as, getting to and from the big cities on the East Coast, but when you're doing long-haul travel on, the western half of the country, you're sitting up top, almost as high as an 18-wheeler, up top in the windowed seats, and then everything else, like bathrooms and things, are down below. So it's actually much, much nicer than you might imagine. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't actually rave about the bathrooms, but at least there are, no outhouses, no way, they're actual bathrooms.
So we've talked all this time, and we haven't even discussed where you've been. Where in these 21,000 miles have you and your family gone to travel?
Well, we've been fortunate to go back and forth across the United States a couple of times. From what I like, so Chicago is really the hub for trains, and so if you're leaving from the East Coast, that is kind of one of your first destinations. So you can go Boston to Chicago overnight. And I've come to love Chicago. It's such a fun city. I don't know if either of you are from there, but the train drops you right downtown, right next to the Willis Tower, right on the canal. So you're in the city. You don't have to bring a car. You don't have to find parking. And then from there, you can pick up just about any line. So we've continued north up through Montana and Glacier National Park and out to Seattle, then down the California coast. We've also gone straight down towards the Grand Canyon and out that way towards Los Angeles. And we've also gone down through Texas and back along through New Orleans. So I think we've covered pretty much all of it. I think we've been on almost every line. And we've been to some fantastic cities, some great national parks, some funky little small town places that you might not think of stopping that actually turned out to be just awesome. So yeah, people will ask me what's my favorite, and it's really hard for me to say one thing because there's so many different adventures you can do.
I find it interesting that you went to all these giant cities where the train station is really a fixture, a hub, and almost a destination themselves. I mean, your descriptions of the Chicago train station and Los Angeles and its unique architecture in that building. But then there were other places where the facilities were not as robust. Can you tell us about some of those?
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons I wrote the book was, sort of my own live and learn and to help other people. So you would think that a city like Provo, Utah, it's a fairly big city, the home of BYU, 50,000 people, their train station is actually just a bench and a sort of open glass, I'm saying enclosure, but it's not enclosed, it's open. And it was 5 degrees when we arrived there. So I just in my head thought that was a big enough city to have an actual train station. So thankfully I had called ahead and we did have a hotel shuttle car waiting for us there. But it's those little things, those little nuances of reading the Amtrak guide and going online, kind of knowing that ahead of time is a big deal because you really don't want to be sitting outside in, 5-degree weather, and it was nighttime, actually. It was about 10 o'clock at night. So, so It's totally up to you. There's another place. It actually ended up being one of my absolute favorite places, and that is a place called Belton, West Glacier, Montana. Having never been to Montana or Glacier National Park, this is almost a flag stop, which means you have to tell the conductor that you're getting off. So we got off in just total darkness in this, there was nothing there except one little light shining in the distance, which was actually the inn that we were staying at. And I thought it was funny when I made the reservation, the woman there asked if I had bear spray. I said, what? I'm like, where am I going? I'm like, we don't have bears where I come from. And I don't think spray is actually going to help me. Because I'd probably just scream and die on the spot. But it was actually the best place to stay if you want to go to Glacier National Park, because it was literally across the street. So when we woke up in the morning and threw open the motel doors and looked out, there it was, and it was just amazing. So we ended up, that being one of our favorite spots.
So what else should you pack for a train trip besides the bear spray?
You actually want to pack, I always say, you want to pack blankets and some type of small pillow or, sort of neck pillow. They do keep the trains chilly. Even in the summer, the air conditioning is pretty high, which I actually like because I don't like something stuffy. So things like that are, you'll be comfortable to sleep in. People go, since there's bathrooms and things, change into, sort of pajamas type things, get comfortable, set up their beds for the night. And then we brought a deck of cards as a must. We had, and that had other people join us who hadn't brought them. Simple games like Uno and things like that for kids. Just lots of abilities to take video, and the photography is amazing. If you're any kind of photographer or you like doing videos, the sites and things are just, you have to have it available and charging at all times. And it's nice because there are plugs at every seat, so you can charge your phone and everything up that you need. You can also, the other thing you can do that's different that was hard to get used to is you can bring food. So you can pack a cooler, you can bring whatever you want onto the train. There's no limits on those kinds of things. You can't bring alcohol on, but other than that, you can bring comfort food, whatever snack food. You tend to eat a lot when you're just hanging around on the train.
So you can't have happy hour, but you can have a full meal.
You can. You just have to buy it at their bar. So you can buy alcohol on the train. You just can't bring it, onto the train.
And so do you have any tips for Amtrak dining, for things that you could buy at the cafe car or things that would be good and appropriate to make at your seat?
So the interesting thing is if you use a rail pass, dining is not included. You use the cafe cards, and they're okay. I mean, they're adequate is the best way I would put it. Nothing to write home about, but not disgusting or anything either. So we ended up, kind of replenishing coolers or buying, some food right outside the train station and taking it on with us, things we liked better. But on one trip, I took the sleeper car home, and you get your meals included. And the food is actually very good. I was pleasantly surprised. I thought, oh, this is a nice perk. I don't have to worry about eating. I don't have to worry about sleeping. And it's a lot pricier, but you really get treated like a VIP. Someone comes in and turns down your bed at night and sets it up again in the morning for regular rail travel, and then you're brought for your dinner time. And it's just a really neat experience. I would love to do that again.
What other amenities can you find on a train? I mean, I think people know what to expect with an airline flight or what not to expect anymore. But
right. Well, I think the biggest thing for me is having taken a train out and then flying back recently, there's so much more room. It's much more comfortable on the train. I know that there's an ad out now that talks about this, but it really is true. You can stretch your legs. The seats are wider. The seats are in twos on every train. So if you're traveling with someone, that makes it easy. We were an odd number. We were 5 people, so that, someone sometimes had to sit with another person. But very often there's enough room for you to have the double seat, as we would say, and then you can really spread out. But there really aren't any, bad seats or bad, they all have great window views. It's just an all around very comfortable experience. It's quieter, and I say that in a way that obviously a train makes noise. It has a certain hum, a certain, rockingness to it. But I didn't hear other passengers, which is nice. I kind of thought, I was worried about the sleeping thing. I thought, how am I going to sleep if someone next to me is talking or someone, for whatever reason, you can't really hear beyond your own little cocoon of seats, which is kind of nice.
And I think you mentioned in your book that there's also kind of enforced quiet hours for overnight trips. Is that correct?
Yeah, they usually, I don't remember exactly. I think it's 10 p.m. that they'll dim the lights and put on, sort of the security lights on the floor. So it makes it much more comfortable for sleeping. But you can still go down to the public cars. Those are open all night. So if you're a bit of a night owl, you can, and you want lights on or you want to go have a drink, you just head down to the viewing cars, they're called, or the cafe car.
Lisa, you mentioned some of the great people that you met on your journey, and I think those included some of the Amtrak staff. Can you tell us some stories about some of the people that you've met?
Yeah, my gosh, we were fortunate to meet just so many different people, and I think that's, to me, was the biggest value, especially for my children. Whether it was, my son sat with someone who was he's into technology, and this person was developing some kind of app right there on the train. So he ended up sitting with him for hours and watching him do his work, and he was just great with him. To conductors and things that come by, the staff, I have to say, are very, very friendly and very willing to help you. So we got our best recommendations from the staff. So many of them are from the cities or towns that you're headed towards. And if you ask them, what's a good thing to do? What's a good restaurant to go to? They're really quick to jump in and give you their top 5 or so. But yeah, that is by far one of the best parts, is just how many people we met, how many, just people from different areas of the country, different religions, different backgrounds. I mean, it was different ages. It was really, it's a very, as you said earlier, communal social experience. And I did see a couple of groups of, college kids that were traveling together, particularly out west. Some of them were headed skiing and a few other trips. And I asked them if they knew about the rail pass, and they had it. So that was kind of funny. And I said, well, what if you could, take a trip with your friends and pick 8 cities and just come and go as you please to these. They looked at us like, that'd be great. I said, I know, you're the market. I'm like, you guys can take full advantage of this. Plus they're younger and probably can sleep better in trains.
There are probably a lot of people like you that, totally enjoyed and relished their trips on trains when they were studying abroad in Europe, but then came back and, got behind the driver's wheel again, the steering
exactly.
wheel. So I'm curious, how do the two options compare? Are there, which one is better suited to the sort of adventure travel that you embarked on?
Well, I think, obviously, hands down, Europe has train travel, over us. It's so much smaller. Their trains are, the system is better equipped. They run closer on time. For us, because of, the vastness of our country, there's really, in most places, only one train a day in each direction. So planning around that takes a little bit of, sort of juggling. And sometimes the conductors will make jokes, they're very strict about, no smoking on the trains, et cetera. And every now and then you'd hear one of them say, because if we put you off the train, there isn't another one for 24 hours. So good luck to you. And we only saw a couple incidences on our trips. But I think that, that piece of it is causes some delays sometimes. It's not perfect. I tell people, if you can't take a cross-country train trip and think it's only about the destination, this type of trip is definitely about the journey. This time last year, actually, I was headed to California in the winter, our first winter trip. I took my daughter because she was headed out to Los Angeles, and I thought getting through the middle of the country, getting through Colorado and the Rockies and the snow, I thought, is this going to actually work? And it was beautiful. Once we got through there, I thought, oh, we're home free. We're headed to California. It's going to be warmer. Well, I don't know if you remember, this time last year, California had some of the worst weather it's had in decades. So they ended up having mudslides. And one of the mudslides actually shut down the tracks right in front of our train. So we happened to be going through Donner's Pass. I don't know if you know it from the old days where people were trapped and, there was some cannibalism involved. So everyone kept saying Donner.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so we were stuck right there. So there were a lot of jokes about the Donner Party. And we were delayed by many hours, but again, it's a fun atmosphere. So there was a group in front of us that pretty much cleared out the bar. And then there was a group I was with that knew I was writing and said, you have to put this in the book. I'm like, I'm definitely putting it in the book.
But it sounds like get used to delays is the MO when you're planning a train trip.
Yeah, you have to. Yes. I wouldn't, say I'm going to make it to Chicago and have, go to a show at 7 p.m., and my train gets in at 4:30 p.m. It should be fine. I wouldn't risk that. You just never know. It can be anything from an accident to a derailment to a mudslide, and who knew?
It seems like there have been a bunch of high-profile, actually accidents and crashes involving Amtrak recently. I'm curious if you know anything about the safety record recently. I don't think it is anything. I'm sure it doesn't compare anything to what people face when they get behind the wheel of a car.
Right. Yeah, I do a lot of book talks and things. A lot of people will ask me about the safety and also the safety in stations, given that they don't have the same security that airlines do. But I think the scary one, the high-profile one that was just out, is the one that was out, I believe, near Seattle or in Washington, where the train was accelerating at, 70 or 80 miles an hour on a stretch it should have been doing 30, and whatever the safety component that was on it wasn't turned on. So sounds like a little bit of a very freak accident to me, almost like you have a pilot that it didn't turn on the right safety in the plane or something. But we luckily never encountered anything like that. The security piece, I say to people, yeah, there's a lot of miles of train tracks across the country, and they do a lot of, I did a little bit of research so I would understand it. They use a lot of drones now to send them out along the tracks to make sure everything is, which is kind of neat and intact, and no one has fiddled around with them. And then the other thing you'll notice, which I think is really cool, is there's a lot of, in the main stations like Chicago, there's a lot of dogs and police, and the dogs are just going up and down. Everyone's in a group that's waiting for a certain train, and those dogs are just covering every single bag, and you can't put your stuff down, walk away. You can't, so, in the world we live in today, it doesn't scare me at all to take a train. I feel, gosh, you could be riding on a bike path in New York City and who knows. So, but I think they do a good job. I mean, I have, seen it in multiple stations, and it makes me feel comfortable. Is it perfect? Probably not.
It sounds like trains, which have a pretty solid place in our imaginations and our country's history, everything from, Thomas the Tank Engine to the little engine that could. It sounds as if they still have a place in our modern travel. I
think so. I mean, I hope that, we will always have trains. I think it's, it's a wonderful way to go. When I talk about this, topic, or people have asked, I honestly can tell you the very next statement is, I've always wanted to do that. And so my thing is, just go. Even if you only do it once in your lifetime, I doubt you'll regret it. I think you'll see our country in an entirely different way, and I think that's worth it.
And so what made you decide to write your book?
So I think I had actually written a book previously, and so it was sort of in me to look at it that way. When I tried to plan our trip, there wasn't anything out there. I couldn't find anyone who really knew the USA Rail Pass or how to use it. And it does take quite a bit of planning. It takes some ins and outs to understand and set up. So the book is really almost a how-to manual, and it's everything we learned and then some, things that went well, things to look out for. Like there's a whole list of things to pack, and I'm just trying to think some of them off the top of my head. But it is I just wanted people to have that resource to say, there's no excuse now. Look, I'll tell you everything we did right and everything we did wrong, and here's how you can enjoy your trip. And then I included, I think, 20 or so different places that we went and what we did there. Because if you are going across and back in 2 weeks, then you don't have a lot of time in any individual place, but there's still a lot you can see in a day or 2 days, whatever you choose. So it's a very flexible path, and learning the ins and outs of how to use it is to your benefit.
Now, Lisa, if anyone's inspired from listening to our conversation, can you tell us where to find your book?
Yes. Well, it's available on Amazon, both as an ebook and you can order it as a paperback. And you can get more information if you're not interested in the book, but I have a website called crosscountrytraintravel.com. So I tried to put up a lot of stuff there, and I get emails and things through that site. I'm always happy to answer questions. It's sort of my little side gig. It's not my day job, but I love talking about train travel.
Well, Lisa, thank you so much for joining us on the Providence College podcast. Hear Lisa discuss her book on Saturday, February 10th during Alumni Family Weekend. Register at providence.edu/AFW. Subscribe to the Providence College podcast in all the usual places, including iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and Google Play. If you like what you hear, please review and share with others. Thanks for listening, and go Friars.